Sorry, wrong world.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's Rushcliffe Borough Council Licensing Committee. Welcome in particular to officers we've got with us in attendance tonight: Helen Tambini, Laura Webb, Peter Harris and Jeff Carpenter, who we'll be hearing both from shortly. Also, welcome to Councillor Inglis, who I know is one of the many YouTube watchers. He's portfolio holder for this area. He hasn't formally been invited to address or be present at the meeting, but he's asked me to let you know that he is watching this evening on YouTube. We're all now well accustomed to online meetings and procedures for which, just to quickly simply say, please, if you could maintain the mute function whilst you're not speaking. Use the raise hand function via the chat to identify yourself as wishing to speak, and remember to unmute yourself when invited to do so. So without any further ado, we'll crack on with apologies for absence.
We have received apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. And declarations of interest? There being none, we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Seems a lifetime ago now, 13th of November 2019. No matters arriving. I don't think we have to move those, do we, Helen?
Yeah, all you do is just have to agree that you're happy with them, and then at some point you will be able to sign them, Councillor Walker. Okay,
so I can ask if we put our physical hands up if we're happy that they're an accurate reflection of the meeting on that evening. Okay, thanks very much. Right, so on to the substantive matters for today, and first updates or revisions to the Hackney Carriage and Private Licence Vehicles Policy. So I think we're getting straight over to Peter.
I can do a quick introduction if you like, Councillor Walker. That's okay, Peter.
Yep, fine.
So members will be aware that we brought the taxi policy to the committee last November. The policy was then approved, I think, in February this year. And in unusual circumstances, we would have hoped that there would be no further need to bring the matter to the committee until it was due for review in 2025. However, as ever with these things, Department of Transport saw fit to issue a revised set of standards for taxis in the summer. And as those changes are reasonably significant, we felt it was appropriate to bring a revised policy incorporating those changes to this committee for consideration. It's worth noting that the report recommends that the policy changes then go out for further consultation for a period of 1 month, and then it will come back to full council in December.
Thanks, Jeff, for that. So Peter, over to you.
Yeah, just to really say there's not much more I can add to that. The Department of Transport have mandated this to us. Our changes have been, your first change is section 5 in the policy. Page 8 is called Appendix R, which is at the end, and that's to do with confidentiality. Whistleblowing is the main word. The government have asked if we can have a robust whistleblowing policy. We've looked at this, and our own policy at Rushcliffe Borough Council is quite robust and allows us to deal with drivers who are coming into our arena and saying that their operator is either breaking the law or is doing some other misguided thing. So that's the first change. Okay with that?
Yeah, perhaps if we perhaps suggest that if we introduce each of them, and then we'll go to the floor at the end.
Yep, that's fine. I'll go through the next one. Section 6, page 8, a new paragraph relating to the common law police disclosure. Before we had the notifiable occupation scheme, so when they went to court, they had to declare that they were a taxi driver, which was a notifiable occupation. That's now been removed, and now it's the common law police disclosure details. They have to tell us when they're arrested, bailed, not charged or suspected of being involved in an offence. That currently wasn't in our paperwork. That is something which has been brought in by this safeguarding addition. The next one is section 6.1, page 9. It's the inclusion of the harm test. And that's to identify whether an applicant has currently or previously been involved in violence where harm has been caused or harm to a child or vulnerable adult. That basically is domestic violence, where we don't get to pick that up off of a conviction. It might just be something which the police have noted, but that then raises the issue to us, obviously, if they've raised harm to anybody who's vulnerable, we would then consider obviously whether they're employable. The next one is section 6.5, page 12. It amends the requirement for all drivers to undertake a knowledge test orally, reading or other, to show that they can communicate with the passenger. That is, at the moment we do a computer knowledge test and they do their application online. So we're now looking at, we need an oral test. Currently and I think further on in the next one, we are using a charity called the Blue Lamp Trust, and I'm in communication with them, and they're looking if they can come up with a suitable test for us to use. Section 6.8, page 14. It amends the safeguarding requirements. All drivers must undergo safeguarding vulnerable passenger training. We do that. It's currently in-house with the council, but we've, during the COVID, we obviously couldn't do that. So we used the approved contractor, which is the Blue Lamp Trust. They run a 2.5-hour course for £12 for drivers. And it's no charge to the authority, but their safeguarding refresher and everything is delivered, and they get a nice certificate. Other Nottinghamshire authorities have followed, City, and I think at the moment Broxtow's also looking to go that way. We will also be mandatory asking every time they renew their licence, drivers every 3 years, to go through this training as well. Also disability and the loading and use of wheelchairs, which we will have to, that's more hands-on, we'll have to do at some stage when COVID allows us to. Section 6.11, page 15. It's a new provision relating to the new code of conduct when working with vulnerable passengers. That's to do with the Nottinghamshire County Council and our policy being joined. Nottinghamshire County Council, this is all to do with when they take the children off to school. It's a school delivery thing. So we're really and truthfully just pointing out that there is another document that when they do the school runs, they must read that policy and abide by it. Section 7.1, page 18. Rules of the type of vehicles that could be licensed to include stretch limousines. We did have them under specialist vehicles, but in here they've asked us to name them particularly. Stretch limousines do have a problem in respect of how many passengers they can take. So we're looking at that. We've placed an officer has to look at the vehicle and number the amount of passengers. Section 9.2, page 26, amends the requirements in respect of fit and proper persons. That, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, that one. It's in relation to our looking at, we have taken on the new, try to put my head on that one, a new
I think we're talking specifically here about in relation to operators, aren't we?
That's it. Well, yeah, there is fit and proper persons. It's to do with, yeah, that's it. It was to do with the operator, not particularly the operator as much, but it was about the people that rent cars out to other drivers. They weren't previously included, but now we have to have a DBS from them to show that they are fit and proper persons to rent out vehicles to other drivers. Section 9.3 and 9.4, pages 27 to 28. It's a new provision related to staff working on bookings and dispatch. They're all required now to have a DBS check. That is anybody that comes into contact with the public over the phone or in person, they must have a DBS check. That's to negate anybody using, I'm going to on holiday for a fortnight, so they might be talking to somebody else in crime. It also stops grooming and other bits and pieces if you read, but there are new requirements for the operators to keep the records of these people, as well as there are new requirements for operators to keep records of bookings. There's been a few new additions, I think in particular to do with cross-border bookings. Section 9.5, page 28, is a new provision requiring operators to have a policy for the employment of ex-offenders, specifically the type of work to be undertaken, such as they would look at what the ex-offender was prosecuted for, as to whether they could become a dispatch operator or otherwise. So it's a bit more of putting it back onto the operator to understand their staff. In 4.311, you'll see general comments, omissions and inclusions. Department of Transport was requiring us to consider the mandatory fitting of CCTV within licensed vehicles. Currently, there are only 2 English councils that have mandated CCTV. We have looked at it. It is complicated in the fact that the council would become the data people, holders of data in all these cars. We need to look at this in much more depth. And the camera system obviously is quite expensive. And at this moment in time, we don't think there is a fiscal ability by our drivers or operators to place this in every vehicle. So I think we're going to send this out for consultation to see what our operators and anybody else says about it. And we will be looking at this next year. Probably we might come back to committee if it's going to be a feasible thing. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter, to walk us through the proposed changes. So may I ask if you have any questions, comments on the proposed changes? I have one. If you did, sorry, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was struggling to remember how to raise the electric hand. On the harm test, the new harm test that's just coming in, I understand what it's all about, and people have to notify the council if they've had any got into any trouble in that sort of area, but within 48 hours. But how do we know if they haven't notified the council? I mean, how do we? I mean, if you've got a driver who has got to notify us of this, whether he knows that he's got to do that or not, or whether he's deliberately keeping it from us, is there any way that we can somehow sort of be a little bit more proactive on that instead of waiting on the trust of a driver to inform us?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a little bit difficult, but we do regular checks on their DBS. So, we do that probably more 6 months or a year. The other issue, obviously, is we're also relying on the police to tell us. And I think we've we actually have got a very good liaison with the police, and we've fielded this with them. So we would hopefully, by the time this becomes live, which we're looking at in January, that link will be more cemented. But we have got to speak to the Chief Constable, because the police powers, common law police powers, are something which they don't regularly think about, and we have to ask them quite strenuously about it to get information. So it's more about building a bridge, and that work is going on at the moment.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I wasn't sure sort of how we link in with the police or other agencies. So as long as they know to keep in touch with us, and if you've got that link going, let's hope that that can happen and continue. Yeah,
that's going on through the Nottingham Authorities Licensing Group. That is the group which that's going through at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Butler. May I ask about the kind of perhaps the most substantive part of this, which is the new provisions covering dispatching? Understand the logic around that and the potential risk factors. Have we got any idea on the current level of compliance and record keeping that the operators are using? Is this likely to be something that there's much kickback from?
That's a very interesting point, because they haven't at this moment in time addressed this nationally to us. I've been looking at their newspaper, and it's not come out against or anything. Their processes are quite robust, because most of them are using apps now, so that is quite trackable. Those that still use pen and paper, when I go knocking on the door, it's amazing how they try to write 100 names down in one minute. But no, most of our operators, I'm quite happy. I can go walk in, look at their books, and they're compliant.
Okay. Thank you. Any other, Councillor Healy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm off mute. And just, Peter, just a question on wheelchairs, really. Am I right in thinking that our Hackney carriages don't take those at the moment?
Oh no, every Hackney carriage must take a wheelchair. They've all got ramps, they've all got the proper strapping. The problem is at the moment is that some have got it and don't know what to do with it. That's probably more the thing. I spoke to a driver the other night, and they said, I only get one wheelchair if I'm lucky a year. But we're trying to make the public more aware they can use them and try and increase that proficiency. So, as I say, the Blue Lamp Trust do a wheelchair course. They come out and show them how to strap it down. So that's what I'm hoping to get pushed at the moment. But yeah, the safeguarding bill covers all vulnerable people, so it covers disability. So that's an area we are pushing this year.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps just on, we're right in the middle of COVID at the moment, and social distancing and so on and so forth. And I think we're probably stuck with that for some time. This clearly is limiting the business of our Hackney carriages, I would have thought. I mean, how are they managing the social distancing side of it?
For them, a lot of it is business as usual. Probably the worst thing that's happened to them at the moment is the shutting the pubs at 10 o'clock at night, because they don't get much work after that anymore. But we certainly see that the private hire trade is still quite buoyant. The Hackney carriage people always tell you that it's the end of the world when you go and see them, but no, they're all there on the rank, and they're okay.
But clearly can't take up to 8 passengers as the capacity is, I understand.
No, they've got they can carry their passengers. If they had a vehicle that could carry 7, they would be allowed. As far as we're concerned in this policy. The COVID policy, I don't know, because I don't really deal with that. Probably Jeff would be better to answer that one to you.
Yeah, and he's been well segued because he's been indicating his desire to do so.
Yeah, he's only to make the point, Councillor Healy, that that the enforcement of social distancing in taxis rests with the police, and were they to be concerned or whatever, then as Peter's alluded to earlier, our relationship with the police is very close. So if there are any specific concerns, then we'll be able to deal with it through the licensing through that perspective. But social distancing in individual circumstances rests with the police.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating a desire to speak. So we're the recommendation is that we're being asked to approve these policy changes for further consultation. I think bearing in mind my assumption of the level of contentiousness on this, can I ask you to indicate if you're not minded to approve that? Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter, for that. And it looks like we're unanimously of the opinion that that these policy changes should be put forward for the consultation period.
Yeah.
Okay, so item number 5, general licensing update with a verbal update from Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Really, I'm going to pass it over to Peter to run through a very brief presentation, but we'll talk a little bit at the end around the impact of the whole of this is really to give members a bit of an overview in terms of what's happening in the world of licensing over the last few months, last 6-8 months. Quite a lot's been happening in the wide world, as you know, but we'll talk about that as we go along. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you. Oh, share screen. So I have to try to find my share screen.
It's at the bottom.
Is
See,
it?
if you put your cursor towards the bottom, underneath the photos, you'll see a green tab saying share screen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just not sharing my screen. Sorry about this. Can you all see my screen? Which has got
Yes.
emails. I don't want you to see that. Right, we're going to move this over. Sorry about this. It's just I've not shared the screen before in Zoom. Can you see that?
Can.
Right, lovely.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Give me a brief overview for licensing between the 1st of January and the 22nd of September. In fact, there's a being terrific. We're going to take you back a little bit further in that respect. The next slide is going to show you about our applications. They were from October 2018 to October 2020. To give you an idea of how COVID-19 has affected the licensing service. The dip for us is in April of this year, and numbers keep us ticking over. Will be the applications from March 2020. If you look, it's around this area here. If you can see that there. I've got some figures just to give you an idea of the top rated, which are 318 private hires and 131 temporary event notices. But the next screen, which I'll put up, that will give you the figures. These are all the different things we deal with in licensing. We last year had 1,315 applications, and so far this year we've had 769, which probably is this year we won't see our gross money go up. We're down about 30% from what we normally have. I say our biggest ones at the moment are temporary event notices, private hire vehicles. They're still going, but public houses, premises licenses have dropped significantly. And at the moment, the trade obviously is feeling that they don't want to go and put any money into anything, and it'll push them back. But I will say to you that it's been a difficult year for us. So the growth has been with tens, which was prior to the 10 o'clock shutdown. For events outside, we're seeing more applications from bigger supermarkets and petrol stations. They're taking advantage of whilst there's a lull to upgrade their premises, and Morrison's have asked for a 24-hour licensing across the country. I don't think they're going to trade for 24 hours, but the opportunity is there for them. The next slide is more a fact of giving you the feel of a French cafe society. I don't know if you're aware, but the Business and Planning Act this year gave us the ability to license tables and chairs outside our licensed premises throughout the borough. This has been interesting for food and drink, but we also share that pavement license with also Nottinghamshire County Council, who were the previous licence authority. In fact, they still are. And I'm not quite sure why the government did this, but they took they took the ability to license down a tier from the county to local authorities. So at the moment, we've had four come in for that, and we are additional to the Nottinghamshire County Council licence. And we will only have that until August 2021. That is a cut-off date for that. And just to give you an idea, although we've not dealt directly with COVID-19, and I know Jeff will go on with that, we answered calls from licensed premises who wanted clarification on the government changes, which in conjunction with our environmental health colleagues, we've signposted them and directed them to do, try and be compliant. It's seen a lot of our licensed premises change what they do. I don't know if you've seen one or two pubs where they've got marquees outside now, and one of them have got some tables with pumps screwed to them, so you can go and self-serve your beer. I think one or two people would be nice about that. They sit under the tap on that one. But I say, certainly it's now they're being told people can't move around from their seats, and the majority are doing that. So we're quite happy. Just to make you aware, a lot of the work which we've been doing during this period has been done from home, not from the arena. And I think and I'm going to say a big congratulations to my staff, because they've kept the applications going. We did not have to stop any applications due to COVID-19. We found alternatives. So we kept the revenue stream coming as much as we could, and normality for everybody. We continue to take part in our regional meetings that are involved with our licensing officers around the district. So we've done that by Teams or Zoom. It's included representatives from the fire, police, the door staff, and all the Nottinghamshire Borough Councils. Since we've actually done that by Zoom, we've actually increased our people coming to the meetings, because they haven't got to travel big distances. So I think that's how we're going to conduct our business in future. Over the last year, we've moved to online. We have managed to move a lot of our forms online and our best practices. That has actually done us a lot of good, because it's saved us time and money. Pavement licenses, current safeguarding measures. You've all been informed about tonight. That has been something we've been pushing. The Notts Authority Licensing Group and the Institute of Licensing have been very good, providing advice in respect to COVID and the appropriate responses. because every day is a changing legal minefield, as you can quite realise. Hackney Trade, they have seen a steady reduction in vehicles since we closed the door on second-hand vehicles from Nottingham City Council. But drivers so far are looking forward to a new operator in our area called the arrival to Uber called Ola. So they should be starting next month. Say Uber aren't in our area, but Ola are in Nottingham City and in our area now. So we'll see how they operate. Really that is, there's another nice picture of City outside. You can tell these interested people when we took the photograph. But no, that's the end of my presentation. If you've got any questions, please speak now.
Perhaps if I think I can.
I can.
You can stop the sharing, then.
Right. Okay. That's lovely. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Cool. Thank God for that.
I've got a bit to add to that, Councillor Walker, if that helps.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So in terms of that final slide that you saw there, councillors, in terms of the impact of COVID-19, you won't be surprised to hear that that's been the single biggest impact on all of us this year. In terms of my service, environmental health and licensing, we've had over 268 new regulations hit us so far since lockdown. That's on average 8 a week, and it would appear that we're going to get a load more by Wednesday. So it's ridiculously busy, very, very busy. In terms of the impact on the service and licensing, I suppose there's just a few points that I'd bring to your attention. Generally speaking, we're trying to take a very supportive approach to businesses, leading them through these regulatory changes, which are significant and in some cases quite worrying for the trade. We follow the police principle of what's called the 4 E's, which is to engage, to educate, to encourage first, and only enforce where absolutely necessary, where it's a last resort. So that's very much the approach that we're taking. It's an approach that I've only today I've completed an enforcement protocol for the Nottinghamshire LRF. So that will be an approach that all councils across the county will adopt in terms of how we want to enforce these regulations on our businesses. So whilst that is the case that we only want to enforce where absolutely necessary, it's there are, you may well be aware of a few instances where we have had to enforce the regulations. I bring your attention to the issue in Central Avenue in West Bridgford in the summer. The issues there where we've had to go out, deal with antisocial behaviour on Bridgford Park and surrounding areas, working with our partners in the police. We had to go out and deal with, as Pete well knows, had to go and speak to the trade, people who were selling alcohol where they didn't have an off-sales licence, that kind of activity. Incredibly busy, and I think that was very successful. Actually in reducing the levels of antisocial behaviour and other criminal behaviour in West Bridgford. You'll also be aware that more recently we've had to close Zinc Bar in West Bridgford as a result of persistent failures to comply with the regulations. But we'll be working with Zinc. I'll put the offer out to the owner that we want to support. We want Zinc back up and running, and we will work and support them to do so, and to do so safely. Equally, so we've also issued now 4 fixed penalty notices on Zinc Bar. Each time it goes up a grade. I think the last one was for £2,000. And we issued a further fixed penalty notice on the White Horse at Runnington. That was a first offence, but for a party of 34 people, breaching the rule of 6 that you'll be aware of. So lots going on. You'll be aware then, of course, that with the changes that the Prime Minister announced this afternoon, that we'll be moving to a Tier 2 status in the county. And whilst that won't change things that much for our businesses, I think it might well impact on our licensing trade in terms of the number of TENs. Peter's quite right in saying that the impact is, we're looking at about a 33% reduction in our income all over, called taxes and premises licenses, but most specifically temporary event notices. And I think Peter will agree with me that given the changes that have been announced today, that it's pretty unlikely we're going to get too many temporary event notices in the forthcoming weeks. But that said, that we are preparing a number of FAQs, frequently asked questions, for the trade. We'll be announcing them through our comms channels, put them on the website, again, supporting businesses to comply where at all possible. And so, yeah, I think that was the update. I think from me, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Got some hands up, and first I'll go to Councillor Begum.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, yeah. Just wanted to ask, you know how you've got a new company that works in the city and county, is that like a tendering process? Because just someone asked me earlier, is it a tendering process, or is it just they just need to approach Rushcliffe Borough Council to become to work in the area as a company?
Sorry, you're talking about the OLA?
Yeah.
No, there are approaches as an operator, which anybody can do who wants to be a private hire operator. We go through a rigorous process with them, and we actually did quite a bit of going to other cities and towns which have OLA and ask them what they think of them. They've been very cooperative. Really, that's what we're looking for. So yeah, they've paid their money, and we'll see how they go.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So they just need to just approach you basically, and then they can just, if they want to be an operator, they can be a part of it. It's just that now there's some more struggling in the city, you see, because of obviously 10 o'clock curfew. Not that it'll make much of a difference if they come to the county, but it's more work, you see. So
yeah, the fact that the drivers like Uber and Ola is the fact that they get paid. And I think that's more the issue of the other operators. I don't think pay very regularly that I can get out of them. But no, it brings in more business. We certainly are flooded by Uber cars Friday and Saturday night. It'd be nice to see a bit of a change there.
yeah, thank you. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask a question around the process for closure of zinc. So my concern really is in the current climate, why it took 4 penalty notices till they actually finally closed. I can understand 1 and maybe 2, but when it gets to the stage of 4 penalty notices for closure, at that point they've had chances. They honestly don't want to follow the policy or process, especially in quite a small business where it can be argued it's quite easy to manage. You know, someone who runs a licensed premise, I know the challenges, and actually for a bar that size, and that's just my concern. I just want to understand, Jeff, if we have to go through those 4 process stages, or if there's discretional ways that you can actually bump that up, especially in the current pandemic.
Thank you. The process for closing a business under these regulations is really quite complex, and it's worth noting that actually we as a borough council do not have the power to close premises. That power sits solely with the county council, not with the borough council. So we would have to, as we did this time, we had to present a case to the Director of Public Health and the Chief Executive of the County Council. And that case has to be based on satisfying a number of tests. And that test for this scenario is, and I think there's another premises in Broxtowe that members may be aware of. That was also the Queen's Head, which was closed a couple of weeks ago. But the test relates to being a serious and imminent risk to public health. And so it has to satisfy that test before the Director of Public Health would recommend closure of a business. So preceding that, for non-compliance that doesn't present a risk to public health, you would use the opportunity to present a fixed penalty notice and or prosecution.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jess, for that. I mean, I've also emailed the Director of Public Health. Obviously, he's quite busy with what's going on at the moment as well to run that process. I just want to see exactly from from our side of view, how we do it. So that's useful. Thank you.
Councillor Bansal.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple of things. Firstly, just thank you for all the work the officers are doing during the period. It's been good. I know you just mentioned about Central Avenue, the educating and the issues that we had around Bridgewood Park as well. I think that was really well dealt with as well. So I just want to say thank you. There's a couple of emails that I've kind of shared, and residents have got in touch with me where they have concerns either about, if I could call it a venue, either a bar or places. And I know we do the due diligence, we come back, but there's still kind of a lot of concerns from the community. What can we do to help and address those? And I know the officers are doing the right job in terms of having those conversations and explaining it, but is there anything else that can be done to just confirm and reassure the community that it is safe and they are abiding by the rules? And appreciate, they're changing quite frequently, but that's one side, just to have some sort of sense of kind of belief that it is happening.
I think I would respond to that in as much as not only are we supporting businesses, we've run since lockdown commenced. We've visited my food and health and safety team, who usually would be carrying out food hygiene inspections, but pretty much and normally infectious diseases, which come under environmental health, accounts for 0.2 of a full-time equivalent normally. Well, I've got best part of 6-7 officers working full-time on COVID, and have done for the last 6 to 8 months, and that's showing no signs of reducing, especially given the news today. So what they're doing, they're providing visits and they're providing support, reassurance to local businesses, but they're also reacting on intelligence that's received to us, either through formal complaints or through intelligence from other sources, i.e. the police. So that's a big part of the job. So that's why we're going out and about all day, every day now. That is the job at the moment, and it is. The concern, I suppose, is that our business as usual services, for example, food hygiene, health and safety inspections, etc., aren't being done to the level that I would want them to be done. And the risk is that whilst our attention is shifted to COVID, quite understandably and quite correctly, actually the risk is we miss something else. We miss a Legionnaires outbreak, or we miss a major accident in a workplace, for example. So that's a challenge that we're having. We've got lots of plates spinning at the moment, as you can imagine, in environmental health, and we're just trying to keep the right ones spinning.
Councillor Butler, I don't know whether your hand is still up from first time round or whether you wish to.
No, it's down. No, it must be a legacy. Sorry about that.
Not at all. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I just wanted to. I know sometimes when, like with taxi ranks and that, and when we've had the cricket on at Trent Bridge, you've been able to get like officers from other authorities to come and help. Because we're now gone into this tier 2 situation, and that an emphasis is going to be like on looking after businesses and making sure that they're compliant. Is there any other areas of resource that you'd be able to go? Because of course every other district in Nottinghamshire are in the same situation now. Is there any kind of help with Nottinghamshire going into these this new tier system into tier 2? Cheers. Thank you.
Is that one for me, Chair?
Yeah.
So is your question, Councillor Williams, around, not around taxis, but more generally, is what support is there from other local authorities? Okay. So I'm representative on the what we call the chief EHO group across the county. So, and there's an agreement there and across the LRF as well that we would share resource wherever it's needed. So let's say, for example, that there was a local outbreak. At the moment, we're seeing a very community-wide outbreak, aren't we? It's not specific to any particular premises. So it's been quite difficult to pull resource from other boroughs. But if, for example, there was a major outbreak related to one premises, whether it be I think we have 2 incident management teams in place now for, I think it's 2 for prisons, for example, at the moment in place. If that resource was that needed, then we could pull on resource from across the county. That agreement is already in place.
Can I just add there, Jeff, also we did last week, we did a joint taxi enforcement visit with Gedling. We stopped 33 cars, which one of the vehicles had 2 bald tyres. So we are still continuing checking vehicles from across the county. Say the airport is the major one we normally do. That was cancelled this year due to the fact of, well, nobody's using the airport really at the moment. But we are still, in licensing, still have the ability to ask officers from other areas to assist.
Thanks very much for that. On the subject of licensed premises, we've sort of concentrated and heard about the last E in enforcement and the cases where we need to. Earlier on in the process, at the engagement stage, I'm conscious that the industry is obviously suffering significantly at the moment, and as we get towards what would normally be their busiest time of the year, what, if anything, have been messages coming from them in terms of, from a licensing perspective, whether there's anything that the borough can do to support those struggling businesses?
Most of them have taken the government's money to support them through. The problem is obviously they're staff heavy if they're doing COVID, because they need to employ more staff to make sure that people stay in their seats. It's a national issue, really. We're seeing smaller companies, say, going bankrupt. Even some of the bigger ones you'll notice on Central Avenue have gone. Really and truthfully, this is a national issue which the government today, with they're not going to stop people in our area, the high area, going to pubs and say the closing is still at 10 o'clock. That's really their lifeline to those public houses, but also reiterates to them that they've got to play their part because that's where people are meeting. Well, we've proved that in our borough already. That people are, this is where they're catching these things. But yeah, the government has come out with it. I think the strategy, well, I would not like to be sitting there and making the calls there at the moment, but the licensed trade, the smaller venues probably haven't opened, or they've decided just to forget it and fold up. But we haven't seen many people give up their license at the moment. They're still there. The license is worth money on a building. So we were hoping when we came out to recovery that would bring some back. But at this moment in time, we're just still playing the waiting game.
And changing tack slightly, have we seen any increase in complaints or issues at licensed HMOs since term started?
I've not seen them, but that would probably come under Jeff and another head of the department.
Complaints in respect of?
Well, some of the HMOs will be occupied by people studying, and they're not going out as much and staying in. So I wondered whether that had seen any increase from neighbours or any issues arising from that.
I don't have any data to suggest that there's already increased specifically in respect to HMOs, Councillor Walker. I do have a ton of evidence I could show you in terms of the significant increase in demand that we've had since lockdown. Not only because I mentioned earlier that environmental health, of course, we've got food hygiene, health and safety, but we also deal with noise nuisance and pollution as well. And demand across nuisance, noise complaints has gone through the roof this year, with more people staying at home. And so it's not only busy in terms of COVID enforcement and COVID advice, it's actually busy everywhere.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much for that update. It's very useful to have, particularly since the kind of sporadic frequency with which the committee meets. That's most grateful. Thank you. We don't typically set the date for the next meeting. So I think that's it's just left for me to say thank you very much and good evening to everybody.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.